In this lesson, we're going to go over the brush tool and the pen tool. Okay, so we have this one image that we were taking a look at, and we're going to just use this as a reference. This isn't really going to be a drawing lecture or a lesson, but it's really just kind of getting you to understand the tools. So don't worry about making exactly what I'm going to be making. So what we want to do is we want to use this as a reference, and what we can then do is maybe drag the opacity down so maybe it's not so harsh. And what we want to do is we want to lock this image down. So we can choose this lock icon, and that's going to lock that down. So anything that I do, anything I try to move to it, it's going to give me a dialog box and say, don't do that. So I'm going to go to a new layer, and this will be our working layer where we will be able to add in any type of marks or strokes. So I'm just going to put in, type in working for our layer. And so we're going to go to our brush. We're going to go to this brush tool, and we can go to B on our keyboard. And what we can then do is go to our brush palette here, and we can kind of take a look at some of the brush sizes. But what I like to do is I like to go to brush settings, and this gives us a lot more things that we can kind of play around with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at our screen, and I just want to see the stroke that I'm going to be making on our for our reference, using our reference as a guide. So I'm just going to be just kind of sketching this eye out a little bit, and you can see the size of the brush. Now we can adjust this size of the brush by using this slider here. We can bring this up. And I'm just going to add in a few marks here. Just kind of sketch it out. Now what we can then do, and I'm just going to maybe go around this a little bit more. What we can then do, we can adjust a lot of the different settings that we have here. So we have our hardness, and this is going to give us a more sharper edge instead of a feathered edge. And we can increase the spacing. So as we draw, we get this sort of dot pattern. So there's a little bit more of a space in between those. And, adjusting that is really based on your preference or what you're trying to accomplish. If you want to do something like that, you can do some type of graphical design. Say you want to not make it very realistic. You want to give it a more of a graphic design feel instead of a drawing painterly feel. So I'm going to undo back a little bit. So let me bring this down back to somewhere where it was. And so we have a few different brushes that we can use. So if we click on here and we go to, say, its settings, we can maybe check out some of the default presets. We can make new brushes. So we have options here in what we want to do. And I just did a restore to our brush settings. Let's bring it back to its default. I use other programs for drawing. I use Sketchbook Pro. That's made by Autodesk. But Photoshop has some really excellent drawing tools in here. And you can see that we can kind of bring down maybe a more softer feel. We can try this soft round pressure size. And you can see as we kind of, play around with this a little bit. Now I'm using a a Wacom tablet, but you can totally use your mouse as well. That's not a problem. So let's take a look at what else we have. We also have various, say this one's a pencil. So there's different types that you can use depending on what you're trying to accomplish. So it's kind of give us more of a pencil, maybe a graphite feel. If you have any experience with doing any type of traditional art, this will kind of mimic that. And then maybe we want to add in this crease in the fold of the skin around the eye. So you can kind of adjust that. And you can always take off or hide, the layer. So if you want to take a look at the drawing without its reference and see how it's turning out. So that is the brush tool, and there's, obviously you can really go deep into all the different brushes. You can use them all. You can use just a selection of like one or two. Some of these are actually really pretty interesting. And then maybe let's use this wet blender and maybe pick up a color here. And maybe we want to use a different layer for this one. So I'm going to click on this layer, make a new layer, and see if we can kind of get a color here. This might be not the right tool for this. Yeah, see, this is more of a blending tool. So let's see if we can pick something else out. Something like this. Bring our reference back, and we kind of adjust this as we go. And maybe we want to bring this underneath you can almost look at it as this is our ink and our black ink, drawing. And now we want to kind of bring in some color underneath it. So, definitely experiment with some of these brushes. So in the next lesson, we'll talk about the pen tool.